New findings show people in the district really stepped up to help their neighbors during the pandemic. D.C. is placing near the top of the list for volunteering during the height of the COVID crisis. To talk more about this research is Americorps CEO Michael D. Smith. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, tell us about the study and the rankings.
Well, Americorps is the federal agency for volunteering and service. And every 2 years, we do a study with the U.S. Census Bureau, which tracks the state of volunteering and civic life in America. We track how many Americans say they volunteer formally with nonprofit organizations, how many Americans say they volunteer informally. And we've got some cause for concern and some cause for celebration in this year's findings, which cover the pandemic period.
So what was the cause for concern and what were the causes that made you say, yes, we're right on?
Well, on the cause for concern side, we shouldn't be totally surprised given this was the pandemic period and a lot of nonprofits had to close their doors. A lot of people who volunteered with schools couldn't do that anymore. We actually saw a 7% drop in the number of Americans that said they volunteered formally with a nonprofit organization. But what stayed strong and steady was the number of Americans that said they helped their neighbor. They did that informal volunteering. They checked on a neighbor in need. They went to the grocery store for an elder. They shoveled a walk. They set up a learning pod for kids of first responders. And so it was amazing to see during a time of such tremendous need that Americans took care of their neighbors.
Where did D.C. rank on this list?
Well, D.C. should be proud. Our nation's capital ranked number 5 in the nation among states that volunteer formally. And you actually had about 47% of the district residents who said that they volunteered informally with that neighbor helping neighbor work. And that's over 200,000 formal D.C. volunteers that contributed more than 14 million hours of service through nonprofit organizations.
And where were people volunteering in D.C.? Was there one particular area?
So people were volunteering across the city, and we saw people volunteering with food banks. We saw them volunteering with Boys and Girls Clubs. We saw them doing a lot of work to respond to COVID, helping in vaccination lines and that sort of thing.
We have 30 more seconds. How much more help is needed and how can folks get involved?
Well, what's important here is we need to make sure this drop that we saw during the pandemic stays a drop. So we need to study this data, make sure we get innovative, make sure that we reduce barriers to service because nonprofits depend on volunteers to do the critical service that they provide across the nation and certainly right here in D.C.
Indeed, they do. Michael D. Smith, CEO of Americorps, thank you so much for your time this morning and for this revealing study. We appreciate it. Information on how you can get more from Americorps right there on your screen. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.